Friday Night Live, just people were logging in. We've had a pretty interesting week this week, haven't we?
You reckon?
Trent?
What happened?
Trent?
Yeah, definitely interesting, yeah. Sorry, we're already
Is everything packed up?
pretty much, yeah. Pretty much we're already at 27 people watching too. So.
Alright, so people are logging on pretty quick.
Dean Casey's already on, James, Kathy.
Hey everyone.
Goop.
Scopes is on. Hey everyone.
Scoops of there.
Hey Casey. Yeah, Scopes is there. Like he's got anything better to do than watch us on a Friday night.
James reckons I've got to keep away from the sausage rolls. That's not very nice, James. Not very nice at all. Teddy's watching.
Thanks for everyone locking in. Friday Night Live is this is its 10th episode, our 9th week of running Friday Night Live.
What's up,
And
David?
it's really, really good. So big numbers, people are giving us a lot of feedback on what they do like, what they don't like. And we're going to try and bring you content, but we do need people to come back to us and tell us what they do and don't like some more, so we can tailor a bit better. So don't forget, next week we're going to be doing Friday Night Live from Billy Farm. Woohoo! We're running a marksman course next weekend, and so on the Friday night we'll be out there, and so we'll have a nice open fire to sit around and talk and whatnot. And I don't know how the lighting will be, but we'll get there.
We'll do our best.
But episode number 10, and Bill has at the last minute again pulled a piece of crap out of his piles of treasures and wants to talk to people about it. But this is an important part of
303 history.
303 history, but not only that, it's an important part of Australian 303 history
As well.
In specifically, there was a very famous West Australian sniper in the Second World War called Doc Wheatley. What was his actual first name? They called him Doc.
Yeah, I can't remember it, honestly.
But they called him Doc because when they did a thing on snake bites, they were trying to teach people in the army about snake bites. I'm going to bring the rest of that over, so.
Yeah, obviously.
We'll leave that out of the way for the time being.
Apparently these have got chili on it, so I'm going to have a go.
Yeah. When they were talking about snake bites, they said about sucking the poison out, and Mr. Wheatley said, no, that's wrong, you've got to put a tourniquet on it and whatnot, and then elevate it. And so he got the nickname Doc from there. So they used to call him Doc Wheatley. But he had one of these he was in the second commandos in East Timor, who lived in East Timor for almost a year without any radio contact or anything with the Australian War Office. We thought they were dead. Yeah, they lived there for that long. And he had a P14 sniper, and he was exceptionally good with it. And
he was an ex-Russia.
Yeah, ex-Russia.
Yeah.
So, but I'll hand you over to Bill, so Bill can talk to you about this P14, and I'm going to eat the sausage rolls. Wait, put it down, fatty.
Good evening, everyone. I'll start with this is the P14 in 303 British, but I'll start earlier on as to when it, give you a bit of history on it. In 1900, the Brits were involved in a little skirmish in South Africa, and they were getting flogged in a way because the Boers were using Model 93, 94 Mausers in 7x57, and they were very good at doing what they needed to do, and that was shooting British soldiers, unfortunately.
What were the Poles using at the time?
No, the Brits were using the old, well, to them it was still a new rifle, the number 1 SMLE. Oh, sorry, not number 1 Enfield, wasn't SMLE, it was a 29-inch barrel model, and they were having...
Was it Enfield or Medford?
It was Enfield by then, yeah.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, but they were having some troubles with it, with bullet deviation and various other minor difficulties really, but they were so surprised that the bore Mausers in 7mm, they instituted a committee in 1900 to investigate building a new rifle to issue to the army. So they started in 1900, and by 1913 they just practically decided on what they wanted, and which was a front-locking Mauser style bolt, one-piece stock, is going away from the two-piece stock that they had on the Enfield rifles.
Why would they want a one-piece stock?
I don't know. I think it was make it a bit more rigid.
They're not rigid.
It was much simpler to manufacture.
Yeah, it'll be simpler. But if you belt someone over the head with one of them, you break it off at the
Could
stock.
break it, yeah. Whereas with the old
SMLEs, you club the shit out of someone with it.
Yeah.
You smash a 10 peg in with it.
And by 1913, they developed what they called a 276 cartridge, which was really a 7mm. But they were having lots of trouble developing it. High pressures, lots of copper fouling in the barrels when they were on their trials models, and typically they hadn't advanced it to a production stage. They had built up to 1,000 experimental or trials rifles, and were trialling them, but were having difficulties with them. Anyway, 1914, another war comes along.
What problems were they having with the 276 though? Because 7mm would have been ballistically, would have been an excellent projectile.
Oh yeah, it was, but they were. It seemed like, to me anyway, by reading the history of it, it seemed like they were trying for high velocity out of it was a 165 grain projectile they were using in 7mm. They were getting nearly 2,800 feet per second out of it. Was relatively flat compared to the 303. The 303 out to 800 yards had a 9-foot trajectory, and 2.276 they called it, only had a bit over a 5-foot high trajectory. So it was a pretty good ballistically efficient cartridge, but they were having difficulties. After 10 rounds, the barrel became so hot that it was impossible to fit a bayonet to it without burning your hand on the barrel. So it was there were still some difficulties. The war started. They decided that rather than try and carry on with this rifle, they would convert the production to 303 British, so that all their rifles in the army would have the same ammunition. They gave Vickers a contract to start building them, but judging by the history, Vickers didn't do a very good job They'd given them 12 months and they'd only produced about 1,000 rifles, and a lot of them were defective. So they'd had inquiries from US manufacturers, in fact, that wanted to undertake the production. So they sent a delegation to America, went to Winchester, Remington and Eddystone, and eventually signed contracts with them to build these rifles. Huge contracts. It amounted to about 1.8 million rifles all told, the contracts were, and the 3 American companies got into production, started producing these rifles. A few hiccups early in the stage with various components that were defective or didn't meet the British specs, but they eventually got rolling pretty well. Although they were not every part was completely interchangeable, as per the production of later on of the SMLE, when Australia and Britain were building the SMLEs. But the British, being short of arms, were desperate for these rifles, but funnily enough, the Yankee factories took a little while to get production going, and in that time Britain got their SMLE production going, and these rifles, when they did come to Britain, were used by the Home Guard and were given to units that weren't in the front line, so that they were non-compatible spare parts wise, so they were used in rear echelons. But it was found that the flip up sight, especially in the Winchester, made them, they were a very accurate rifle, and they were deemed to be good enough as a sniper rifle and a marksman's rifle, and they were a number of them were recalled and fitted with a fine adjustment elevation, and they were issued then to marksmen in the front line in France in 1917-18, and they were used quite extensively as sniper rifles to try and counter the fairly extensive use of snipers by the Germans.
Well, they really sort of perfected the art of sniping from trenches back then as well, hadn't they?
Yeah, absolutely. The Germans were building Mausers with telescopic sights, and quite useful telescopic sights. And typical of the British, they captured a couple of German rifles and pretty well copied the scope and started fitting it to their own rifles. And it was just another example of the British using someone else's design. In the end, the Brits were delivered just over 1.1 million of these rifles. And the funny part about that is that by the time the Second World War come around, the Brits were still short of rifles. God knows where all these P14s had gone. Over 1 million of them.
Gangsters.
Right?
Gangsters.
Gangsters? Oh, they probably, a lot of them probably in the North Sea. 1917 comes along, and argy-bargy between the manufacturers, the contractors in America and the British government. The Brits eventually came to the conclusion that they would buy all the equipment, machine tools, tooling, dyes, everything off the contractors, let them continue manufacturing with those, but the British government then owned all the equipment. 1917 comes along, and the Yanks are going to get into the war, and of course they're short of rifles, and they only have two factories were actually building Springfields, but they didn't have a big capacity. So a bit of redesigning, and the Yanks turned this rifle, the P14, into their M17, which was a slightly different bolt face, a new barrel, of course, in 30 caliber, and they were chambered in the 30-06 round, which was the same as the Springfield. So they opted for compatibility of ammunition between all their rifles as well. And it went on. They went on to build about 3 million of those. So it had a fairly long life.
What factories were producing P14s and M17s?
P14s in America.
Yeah.
Winchester, Remington, and Eddystone. Eddystone was a Remington-owned company, and they had a huge factory, and they built. They had a contract for 800,000 rifles. They built something like 680,000 in the end, because the contract was shortened when they went to producing M17s. They just virtually, one day they were producing P14s, the next day they were producing M17s. So they just carried on making pretty well the same parts. The stocks and lots of parts are interchangeable, but some parts aren't, of course. But yeah, the rifles that the British fitted the fine adjustable sight to eventually became sniper rifles. They fitted a set of slip-on mounts to it, a claw type fore-end, a peg at the back, and these rifles were very good at became a very accurate sniper rifle. They were all Winchesters. They only used Winchesters for their sniper rifles. And Australia, India, South Africa, all the Commonwealth ended up with a few of each. And in the Second War, Australia used this telescope rifle as their sniper rifle until about 1944, when they started putting telescopes on the heavy barrel Lithgow SMLs.
Were they Lithgows? I thought they were First World War rifles that
they were Lithgows, but they were
Lithgows.
Okay. 1917, 1918, 1915's manufacture. there was a very few BSAs and a couple of Enfields in the list, but Australia in the end in 1944, 45, 46 built about 1,300 sniper rifles on SMLE actions.
Gary from Albany wants to know how many shots in the mag.
It's just a 5-shot integral magazine, same as a Mauser. It's pretty much a Mauser knockoff with a few bits on it, like the longer sight radius, which is a big advantage, but not many other things that weren't you couldn't attribute to a Mauser anyway, you know.
Didn't Mauser sue him or something afterwards?
They did after the war. Mauser sued the Yankees that was over the Springfield though.
Oh, okay.
Still
patency.
Stripper clip fed?
Yeah, stripper clip fed.
Yep.
Yeah. Ejector built into the bolt release.
Like a Mauser.
As per a Mauser action, yeah. It has this one. They have various ones, but two types of magazine follower. This one, the magazine follower stops the bolt when the magazine's empty. They had a trials without that, but there's not much else. A different bolt, different safety catch to a Mauser. Safety catch locks the bolt up and locks the striker. Doesn't lock the sear. What was the other thing I was going to say about him?
Talk about Doc Weekly a little bit.
Yeah, well.
So second, he was in East Timor.
Yeah, when East Timor was Portuguese.
What happened in East Timor for those people who don't know?
When the Japanese came down through the Dutch East Indies, which is now Indonesia, Portuguese Timor naturally was a neutral. Portugal was neutral, and their colonial possessions were obviously neutral countries or neutral land. Australia, in my opinion, being a bit precocious, decided that they would occupy East Timor, and to prevent the Japanese doing it, of course. Oh yeah, of course. And so they sent about 200 blokes there. They're going to do it, aren't they? When the Japs are coming down with thousands. Anyway, they
just occupy West Timor as well.
They did.
The second force.
Yeah, but that West Timor was Dutch. So there was Dutch troops in West Timor.
Oh, okay.
And some Australian troops, and they just sent the second commandos to East Timor. They only just beat the Japanese there. The Japs landed at Dili. The Australians retreated into the hills, and they carried on fighting the Japanese for about the next 14 months, on and off. They got relieved, but the relief troops didn't stay there long. They'd done their job. They'd tied up over 10,000 Japanese troops in East Timor, which could have been used somewhere else and weren't, obviously. But Wheatley was a ex-kangaroo shooter and really knew what he was doing. He carried one of these, and he was exceptionally good. And the second were distributed all over West Timor in little groups here and there.
East Timor.
East Timor, sorry. Yeah, in little groups. And their idea was just to harass the Japanese and make sure that they kept them occupied, make them commit large numbers of troops where they didn't have to.
Essentially just hit and run tactics, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely, hit and run tactics. And Wheatley, one of Wheatley's, in one of the books, Wheatley chronicles how he and another guy, a guy with a Bren gun, ambushed a Japanese truck. And they didn't realise that the Japs had about 14 blokes in the back of the truck and a machine gun. And of course, you got a Bren gun and a P14 against 14 Japs and a machine gun. Anyway, they bowled over a few of the Japs and they decided they'd have to leave in a hurry. And they're tearing up this hill. Of course, the poor bloke with the Bren gun was struggling a bit. And all of a sudden, out of the bushes came two of the locals, grabbed the Bren gun off the guy that was struggling, carried it to the top of the hill, put it down in front of him, disappeared into the bush again. So they did have some help, and they did a great job. Wheatley was really well appreciated by all his mates because he was quite a character, but he was also a very good rifle shot. So whenever they got into trouble, he was always there.
So if you want to read a good book about East Timor and the Australian campaign that was there, there's a really good book called Independent Company. I think it was written by Callanan, wasn't it?
Callanan, Bernard Callanan.
Yeah, who was one of the officers that was there. And he talks about the Australian occupation of East Timor and the harassing of the Japanese that were there, and the construction of a radio by their signallers, because they had all their radio equipment was destroyed, and they had to make a radio and then try and make it work and get a code back to Darwin, who didn't know that they existed, thought they were the Japanese.
Well, a lot of these guys' families were actually sent letters saying they were missing in action because they had no way of communicating with the outside.
Yeah, they thought no one was there.
You know, and they just continued to fight like,
yeah.
You know,
and they were lucky in that the second were independent company, they were called, so they were independent. They had their own food, their own transport.
Well, they'd run out of food pretty early on.
They did, yeah, but you know, this is how they were set up though, so that they didn't have to depend on some other unit to look after them with some part of their needs. So they could butcher their own animals, you know.
And they were fit.
Yeah.
They were tough and they were fit and they were trained to last, a very long time, be very resilient. So it's a really good chapter in Australian history. If you're interested in war history, it's a very good chapter of our history to read into.
If you want to read something that's a little more contemporary, I'll get a little bit upset about East Timor because they did so much to help our guys in the Second World War, and we've done so little to help them since. There's another book just come out in the last 12 months called Oil Under Troubled Waters by Bernard Collery. Read that and you'll understand how two-faced our governments have been ever since the Second War towards the Eastern Marine.
And greedy.
And greedy, absolutely greedy. Yeah.
Cool.
But
Thanks,
anyway,
Phil. Appreciate it.
Nice old rifle.
And if you've got a P14 or something along those lines, let us know. Let us know how you came across it, what sort of vintage it is, and that sort of stuff. So, thanks again for tuning in, everyone. We've got a couple of things to go through tonight that I've already outlined in the previous message. That's all Bill stuff. So I'm going to go over some questions from last week that some people had during the week as well. So hopefully there's going to be something in there for everyone.
it's sun-kissed bride.
And then Trent is going to talk about Nosler.
Wow.
Nosler's a projectile company that we've been dealing with for a long time, and they've got a really good range of products, and we're going to go over a bit of the range of products that they do. I don't have everything here, but they do a wide range of projectiles, and again, depending on what kind of shooting you're doing, chances are Nosler will do a projectile that will be exceptionally well suited to that. Okay, so Bill's done talking about old crap. So questions. So the first question that I'm going to tackle is in regards to Parallax. So Trent, can you tell us what Parallax is?
How's the easiest way of describing it? Basically, what it is for those of you guys that have sort of only just really sort of got into shooting, it's when you look across, say when your wife's driving your car, and you look across at the speedo, and it says she's doing 110 k's an hour. Actually, this is more error than anything, but I'll continue. In reality, she's only probably doing 100, but because you can't see where the needle actually is, it looks like that it's out. So parallax is the same for a scope. It's when the reticle is supposed to be sitting on the target, so that if you have any sort of error in your eye box where your eye is actually behind the scope, that reticle will actually appear to move on the target. You go back through the questions.
Yeah, just looking back through it, making sure we've covered everything.
Yeah.
Well done. It's made absolutely no sense whatsoever.
It made heaps of sense to the right people.
All right. So when you're looking at the way I explain it is that when you're looking through a scope, you've got two things that you're looking at. You've got your target and you've got your reticle. Now, if you've got parallax error, what happens is that the target and the reticle look like they're in different planes. They look like one is behind the other. And if you move your head, they move relative to each other, yeah? They move like that. So depending on where your head is behind the scope, you can have an amount of error. Now, if you've got no parallax error, if your parallax is set correctly, they look like they're in the same plane. So it doesn't matter where you put your head behind the scope, they're going to both move in tandem and you're going to get rid of that parallax error. Now, parallax adjustments on scopes.
That's pretty much what I said.
You're talking about cars and shit. No one cares about cars. So
I was talking about gauges, but
when you get parallax, like when you eliminate parallax error on most good quality scopes, you'll also get rid of any focus difference as well. So you won't have to focus on a reticle and focus on a target independently. They'll look like they're both in focus at the same time because they'll look like they're in the same plane, okay? And so that's what parallax is. Now, with most scopes that don't have parallax adjustment, the parallax is set. Now on most scopes, American scopes in particular, it's about 125 yards. So at 125 yards, your image and your reticle will look like they're in the same plane. Any other distance further than that or closer than that, you're going to have problems. It's going to look separately, except for rimfire scopes. Rimfire scopes without parallax adjustment have usually got their parallax adjustment set at 50 yards instead of 125, because obviously rimfires are shooting at shorter distances. Now, if you've got adjustable parallax, it means you can adjust your parallax from usually within about 50 to 25 yards all the way out to infinity. Usually it goes out to 200 or 400 and then infinity, and I'll explain why that's not important beyond that. The other one is, but on a rimfire scope with adjustable parallax, usually you can adjust the scope right back into 10 yards, yeah? Or all the way out to maybe 100 or 200 yards, and then you hit your infinity. The problem is that it takes a lot of adjustment to get your parallax in really close, closer than 50 yards. You need a lot more movement to be able to adjust for that than what you do at long range, because the error comes in from the distance between your parallax setting and where the target actually is, yeah? So if your parallax is set at 25 and your target's at 50, you'll have a very similar, even though there's only 25 yards between it, the parallax error will be very similar as if your parallax was set at 200 and the target was at 400. Even though there's 200, you see what I'm saying? It's the factor between the two distances which causes the error. So obviously if you're shooting beyond 500 meters, your parallax is set at, say, 200, 300 infinity, it'll be roughly around 500 meters. If you're 600 meters or 400 meters, there's not going to be very much error at all at those sorts of distances due to parallax. Then it's much more important at larger factors. So if you've got your parallax set at 50 and the target's actually at 200, it'll look very out of focus and you'll have a lot more parallax error. Okay? How do you get rid of parallax?
Oh, no, man. Go on. Yeah, yours didn't make any fucking sense at all. That's exactly what I said.
Fuck off.
I said it in 15 words, you said it in 4,000.
Yes.
We've been sitting here since this morning now. This show's going to go till midnight.
Can't have been sitting here since this morning because I don't get here on
Oh,
time.
that's true.
So, the parallax error, one of the best ways to get rid of it is to actually adjust your parallax as you're looking through the scope, moving your head around.
Open sights.
What?
That gets rid of parallax error.
Yeah, well, I suppose if you've got open sights, then you've just got you've got huge parallax.
you've got huge
because if
parallax
you
error.
move your eye, then it's, yeah.
That's all right.
So to get rid of parallax error, best thing to do is look through the scope as you adjust your parallax. You're better off doing it on a lower setting, like magnification setting, yeah, than a high magnification setting. Because on a high magnification setting, you've only got a very small exit pupil, yeah, the beam of light that comes out of the scope. And so if you've got a very small exit pupil, you can't move your head around very much at all, or you'll lose the image entirely. Which is why a lot of competition scopes actually have smaller front objective lenses, like 40mm front objective lenses, and big magnification. Because when you're shooting during the day, the exit pupil is not as important. So if you want light transmission though, you need a bigger exit pupil. The bigger the exit pupil, the more parallax error you have. Yeah? But the best thing to do is look through the scope and do it. Like, don't necessarily trust entirely the numbers that are etched on the scope, because they may not be 100% correct, and a lot of the time they're not correct. And so they're a good guide to get you sort of on track, but you really need to look through the scope and actually move your head around. And you need a really nice tight rest to be able to do that. Yeah.
Well, like on my LRP, it actually doesn't have any numbers at all either. It just has dots.
Yes.
So that actually takes away from that fact of people trying to go, oh, well, I know I'm shooting at 400 meters. I better dial mine to 400.
Yeah, and it may not be that close anyway.
That's right.
So that's parallax error. If you guys have got any other questions in relation to parallax, just shoot us a message. But definitely, what I've done in the past is, like in America, they've got all their scopes set to 125 yards, because that's sort of a good average when you're shooting deer. But a lot of people over here who are shooting kangaroos, we're typically shooting them at longer ranges.
I mean, let's face it, they always throw them on bloody AR platforms and shit like that anyway, where they shoot fuck all distances regardless.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. They're hunters as well. Like deer hunters and stuff they still use bolt action rifles.
Oh,
like,
yeah, but
they don't typically use M4s. They actually might be prohibited in some states to use M4s.
Yeah, I'm not sure. If we got any Yanks on, tell us what you think.
Yeah.
Give us a rundown on it.
I thought I felt sure.
That's good job, bro. Alright, what are we doing now?
So yeah.
Oh, before we go any further. Oh, have we finished Parallax?
Yeah, we finished parallax.
Cool, can you pass me my...
Did you get me a beer?
Well, no, because the gun was still out. And we can't have guns out and a beer.
We can't
at the
have
same
guns
time.
and beer at the same time.
So,
and do we want to talk about that?
a little bit, but...
Or do you want to talk about something first?
Well, I'm just going to do my specials first.
Alright, you do your special. That's it. No, don't worry about the continuity of the fucking show. Just throw shit in there whenever you feel
Well, you're
like.
going to get a beer anyway. So, hello everybody. For the next month. Let's go month, yeah, bugger it. We'll go month. On special, right here, I actually have Federal 308 rounds. They got the 110 VMAX in there. They were $115. I'm doing them now, a packet for $85. So that's 50 rounds, $85, Federal 110 VMAX. Come in, see me, grab them. I've got limited supply, but let's get them out the door. Cool, that's my special done. I did just bring one beer.
Do you want a beer?
No, that's all
You
right.
didn't say you
Sit
fucking
down,
want-
sit down.
No, I'm
Sit
getting
down.
a beer now.
Oh, I tell you, it's like herding cats here. It really is. It's
Well,
awesome.
you get your Great Northern.
Great Northern. Now, Great Northern, if you are listening, we are looking for a beer sponsor.
No, we're
So-
fucking not.
I am.
You're looking for a free dish, you fuck.
I'm personally looking for a beer sponsor. So, if, Great Northern, if you are listening, look at how much sponsorship. Giving me a sponsorship would fuck it, don't even worry about it. Just send me free beer.
So you guys would have seen over the last few weeks that, not every week, but we do, it's a Friday night and we do enjoy having a beer, a responsible beer. And it is only one beer. I mean, we've got to drive home and that sort of stuff. And we do want to promote the responsible consumption of alcohol.
We do.
Because we're all adults here. And like I've said before, I'm in my 30s, he's in his 40s.
I'm still in my 30s, you bastard.
And so, we're not teenagers and that sort of stuff. We're not doing anything nefarious. And, I meant to say hi to Waypole when we started up, but I forgot. Hi, Waypole. So, we are looking at supporting some local businesses, though. As you would have known, with the COVID restrictions and that sort of stuff, as well as seasonal changes and whatnot, there has been there's been a big downfall in the consumption of alcohol in Western Australia during that sort of period. And so several of our clients here own pubs and clubs and that sort of stuff, and they're doing it perhaps a bit harder than what some of the other aspects of society are. And so we do want to support them. Now, I meant to bring one in this morning and I forgot, and I'm going to bring one in probably tomorrow, and that way it's here for next week. But one of the things I really wanted to do is start to showcase some of the wineries and breweries that are in WA, and actually promote them on our thing. I'm not looking for sponsorship or anything like that. What I want to do is I want to show my membership, show the people that are watching this show that WA produces some really good products. Can you turn that off? WA produces some really good wines, and some really good beers and stuff as well. And so we want to encourage our members to drink responsibly, but to support West Australian businesses and purchase those products. So now that we've done that segue and you've spoken about your cheap 308 ammo, it probably doesn't matter if you've got it on for a month or whatever, because it's probably going to sell out.
Yeah. But it is cheap. It's good rounds. I wanted to get it out there.
Yeah. It's 110 grain.
It is 110 grain.
So foxes, roos, any of that sort of stuff.
Just a varmint round here.
Yeah. Okay. Next question that we had, I'll go back to. We had a question relating to barrel length, twist rate. How to calculate the best twist rate, how to work out the best barrel lengths for certain calibers, certain cartridges, and then tying into that is also the freebore of the cartridge, your seating depth. I'll answer that separately. So we'll start off with barrel lengths and that sort of stuff. So obviously, when you're looking at a cartridge, you've got there's a lot of factors about the cartridge that go into optimal barrel lengths, and they're sort of all tied in together. But basically, you've got a barrel bullet diameter, and then you've got the case behind it. Now, sort of middle of the road is sort of 223 308. Yeah, they've got a very similar bullet to case capacity sort of equivalent ratio, and as a result, though, we use very similar powders. You use 2206H and 2208, which are sort of medium range, medium burn powders, and so
kind of like unicorn dust at the moment, though.
Yeah, that's right. Didn't you put an order in that?
I did, yeah. Hopefully we see some.
When are you going to see it though?
Hopefully next month.
Are you going to have any left over, or is it all back ordered?
I think most of it's back ordered.
Alright, so we're still going through back orders, guys, so if you do want powder, make sure you get your name down, or you'll just have to wait weeks, months. So, so middle of the range, sort of, not underbore, but not overbore cartridges like 308 223 using 2206H, 2208 powder. Now, the bigger the case capacity relative to bullet diameter, so if we go from 308 to say 3006, for example, same bullet, but you're shooting with much more powder, then you start to go to slower burning powders, to develop the velocity. If you use more of a fast burning powder, you have a huge pressure spike, and then things start to go wrong. So you need a slower burning powder. And then if you go to like a 300 Win mag, then you go on a slower powder again, 2213 or 2217. And then if you get up to your big silly ones like 300 Norma mag, then you're going to like 2217, 2225, some of them even 2218, to develop the maximum velocity. So you're going, the more overbore you go, the slower the powder you have to use. Now, if you're using a slower burning powder, using bigger volumes of a slower burning powder, you need more barrel to burn it up in, If your barrel's too short, like if you used a 22-inch barrel on a 308 with 06H powder, like a 150, 175 gram pill, you'll burn it all up easily, nice and efficient. But if you use the 22-inch barrel on something like a 300 Norman mag, or even a 300 Win mag, using like a 2217, like a slower burning powder, then you're going to have a lot of unburnt powder. You're going to have a big flash that comes out, and it's going to be a big waste of powder. You're not going to, that powder is not helping increase the velocity of the projectile, and so definitely it will suffer from that. So you can typically use, like if you need velocity, then you'll need to use more powder. You need to use more of a slower burning powder, and you need more barrel length. And so barrel length is important if you need to generate velocity. But if you don't need to generate velocity, if you're only shooting out to say, 300, 400, 500 meters, then velocity isn't as important to you because you're not going anywhere near the transonic zone anyway. And so you can have a shorter barrel if it's because it might be beneficial for you to have a 22-inch barrel, so you don't get it snagged on leaves and trees and that sort of stuff, and so it's easier to stick out the window of the ute, that sort of thing. So barrel length is tied into how underbore and overbore the cartridge is. So if we go the other way, if we go from 308 and we go down to something like a what's an example? So we go from a 308, which has got pretty standard. If we go to a bigger projectile, so if you go from 308 to say 338 Federal, which is the same case, shoots a bigger, heavier projectile, you actually need a faster burning powder to actually generate the velocity. So you can get away with a faster burning powder, and you can get away with a shorter barrel, 22 or even 21, 20-inch barrel, and it'll develop all your velocity. And then if you go out to the extreme to a straight wall case, like a 4570 for example, or a 22 Hornet, which is pretty close to being straight walled, then you're going down to really fast burning powders like 2207 or even 2205. So they're really fast burning powders, and they develop all their velocity in short barrels, which is why you can get 4570s with 16.5-inch barrels. 16.5, 18, 20 is sort of standard, but even that's pretty long for that case. So definitely barrel length's tied into look at what sort of powder it generates good velocities at, and based on that, you'll be able to consider your maximum, like your ideal barrel length from there. But now if we're talking about twist rate's in relation to your ability to stabilise the projectile. Bullet twist is what stabilises projectiles. So if you're shooting long projectiles, you need to spin them faster to get them to stay stable. If you're shooting short projectiles, you don't have to spin them as fast, okay? But there is a bit of a myth in that some people say you can lose your accuracy from over-stabilising a projectile. So if you're spinning a bullet too fast, if you're driving it too fast and it's spinning too fast, that you can over-stabilise them, and that's nonsense. What can happen is that if you spin a projectile too fast, if the centrifugal force on the outside of the projectile is too much, the jacket won't hold it together and the jacket will split off. The jacket comes off, the core keeps going, but it's got a very low ballistic coefficient and it drops and tumbles in the air usually. Bill will have a story about that, how once you were loading your 2250 with 22 Hornet projectiles, and they went poof about 15 foot out from the barrel as a grey puff.
Just a grey puff, and the whole projectile just disintegrated. But I've also seen it in 6.5 by 55s too. Guys shooting light gain projectiles at fairly high velocities, for 6.5, so they've got thin jackets and they just come apart at about 70 or 80 metres.
Well, I know when I was shooting at Cooley up with my 6.5, the jackets were splitting off that when I was shooting from 500 metres, and the bullets would bounce off the 100 metre mount. The jackets would bounce off. The core, the jacket would go everywhere. The core would bounce off the 100 metre mount, and that was just because the jacket just wasn't thick enough for a 6.5. Some 6.5s, 1 in 200 mil twist rate is quite typical in the military guns, which is quite quick. That's a lot of force on the projectile.
And it's been engraved with the rifling, so it's got weakened sections all around the projectile.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. So that's your barrel length twist rates. The other one's freebore. So me and a mate were talking the other day, and we're talking about 7mm rum, and I didn't believe him at the start. Yeah, I don't know. Someone I know.
Oh, somebody you know, yeah, acquaintance.
And we're talking, and he said that the 7mm rum had 400 thou freebore, which I thought was rubbish. 400 thou of freebore on a 7mm project.
Yeah, that's nearly half an inch,
It's a huge amount of bloody freebore. Yeah. And so I looked up a diagram for the chamber diagram, and it was true. It's 400 thou. Yeah. So, like typically speaking, like 200, 250 thou around there. Like some guns, some calibers have got shorter freebores, especially when you're using long projectiles in standard magazines. You've got to push the proji back so they make the freebore shorter. At 400 thou, I hadn't heard of that before. But yeah, it's true. So freebore, what freebore is though, is it's a parallel section just forward of the neck of the case in the chamber that allows the bullet to come out of the case and get a bit of a speed up before it hits any rifling, and because the rifling slows it up and the pressures go up. And so by having a longer freebore, you'll actually drop the pressure slightly. You won't get a big pressure spike. You drop the pressure slightly so you don't burn the barrels out as much, and it's better for the gun. You can get the bolt open easier and that sort of stuff. So what's ideal freebore lengths? And we're getting into quite a technical subject now, and a lot of people probably won't have as much interest in it. Scoops.
He says that guy sounds like a smartass. Did you tell him to fuck off?
Any number of times, yeah. He won't take a hint. But I like his wife, so she makes good.
Because it was Scoop.
Yeah.
So Jonas is looking at us. Confused.
With freebore,
did a really nice sausage roll for us tonight. So thank you, Jonas.
So Remington's really bad for this. So Remington in their 308s even, they make it that even with the projectile pushed right out of the case, so it just fits in the magazine, you still can't reach the rifling. And that's to drop pressures down and that sort of stuff. But all the companies have sort of gerrymandered their throats and whatnot to try and reduce pressures and for marketing purposes more than anything else, for barrel life and that sort of stuff. But when you're cutting a custom chamber, we can cut the neck length and throat angles at whatever we want. So generally speaking, like I said, 200, 250 thou. But what you can do is you get a case, you see the projectile in it, so it just fits inside the magazine, and then we cut the chamber to suit that. So that way you can still reach the rifling. You can set your projects all the way out so they touch the rifling if you want to. But so they'll still fit in the magazine. But there's no free lunch. In some certain calibers, in certain magazines, you can't do that. Well, you can do that, but then you end up pushing the project right back inside the case and chewing up case capacity. And that's one of the reasons why 260 Remington, in my opinion, is a very poor design cartridge. So there's no lead in their throats. There's no parallel section at all in a 260 Remington. It just tapers straight in at 3 degrees, and that's to keep the projectiles short so they fit in a standard 308 Remington magazine. So that's one example. Another example is the 338 Edge. There's people out there that this is the greatest thing ever. The reason they made the 338 rum shorter than a 300 rum was because you had a longer projectile. And so to be able to fit them in the magazine and not have a proji pushed right back inside on the case on the powder, restricting your powder capacity, they made the cases shorter. So a 338 rum case is 2.760 and a 300 rum case is 2.850. So it's longer. But that's sort of down to bullet selection. So 338 Edge is the 2.85 case, the 300 rum case necked up to 338. But then you have to push the projies right back in the case to fit them in the magazine anyway, so it's a pointless exercise. All you're doing is you have to either single feed them, or you have to shorten your throats right down, and then you experience other problems. So it's robbing Peter to pay Paul. I really don't see the point of it. But if you certainly look at a lot of really well-designed cartridges in recent years, and for as much as I hate to say it, one of them is 6.5 Creedmoor. 6.5 Creedmoor is a shortened down 308 case, so it's shorter to allow for the long 6.5 produce, so you don't have to push them right back on the power capacity, but you've got a nice free bore, and generally speaking, you get better accuracy from cartridges that are designed that way. If you look at other really good cartridge designs, like 6.5 by 55, shut up.
6mm punchy.
No. Well, that's actually, we did design that one quite well. But we designed that we had the advantage of designing that around a bolt action rifle.
Yeah.
So, but if you look at 6.5 by 55, for example, it's been an absolutely brilliant cartridge for over 100 years now, but it had the benefit of being designed as a cartridge, and then they made the magazine to fit it. You know what I'm saying? They didn't make a magazine and then, oh, how do we fit this in? No, they made the cartridge, which was, so they had a really well designed cartridge, they had a really good throat length, they had really good projectiles, they were seated at the right length, and then they made the magazine suit. So from that perspective, it's a really, really well designed cartridge, but it had certain advantages. And so, but if we go back to the parent issue that we're talking about, which is throat length, obviously if your throat's too long, you won't be able to reach it. If it's too short, your bullets don't get a good start in the barrel, like a good parallel start in the barrel, and that can deteriorate your accuracy. And so, so it's a bit of a trade-off. But the other question which was asked was whether you should seat your projectiles on the rifling, so they're touching the rifling from the word go, or whether they should have a certain amount of jump.
622.
Oh, you got somewhere to be.
Well, I just don't want to make sure that we're not here at 11 o'clock like we normally are.
So, whether you want jump or whether you want to seat them on it. So there was a lot of people like to seat their projectiles on the rifling, and there is merit to that, and certainly bench rest shooters like doing it. If you're new to shooting, or if you're a hunter, or if you're a long range shooter or something like that, I don't see as much utility to loading projectiles on the rifling as I do off the rifling. So the problem is that when you're setting a projectile on the rifling and you're not using like top match grade dies, you're not using prep brass, if you're not using the best, the problem is that when you see the projectile on the rifling, so it's just touching the rifling, there's a heap of little errors in the manufacture of the projectiles, of the dies that you're using, of the cases and everything. And one projectile might be just touching the rifling. The next one that you see might be just in the rifling. The next one might be just off the rifling. Okay, and the problem there is that there's a huge pressure difference between those three projectiles, and that's going to result in big velocity differences, which is going to result in a taller group at longer range, if you're talking about long range shooting. It can also result in stuck projectiles. So if you chamber around and the bullet's just inside the rifling, there might actually be more pressure on the projectile from the rifling than what there is from the neck of the case. And if you don't take a shot and you open the bolt, the projectile can stay in the gun, in the barrel, and you pull the case off the back of it. You fill your gun up with powder, and so at that point you just put your gun away and you're driving for the rest of the night, everyone else is shooting. So there's some dangers associated to that. Yeah, I'm not saying you shouldn't do it ever, but I'm just saying that it's probably not the best place to start. The best place to start, in my opinion, is about 10th hour off the rifling. So if you start about 10th hour off the rifling, and if you've got little errors, little inconsistencies with your projectile and your dies and that sort of stuff, it's not going to have a huge pressure difference. Your velocity is going to be pretty consistent, but you're also not going to run into the problems of having bullets stuck in the barrel. So I would start at 10th hour. Now, depending on whether you're using different designs of ogives, like different seating jumps to get to the nodes where you're going to get the best accuracy and that sort of stuff. So, but regardless of what projectile we're using, I would start at 10th hour and then I would go off from there. Okay. So I'd go further and further. Up to 120th hour in some cases, but it depends on the projectile.
Would you go a bigger jump or a smaller jump between the two?
Depends on the projectile. And I'll explain that in my writing course, so I'm not going to talk about it here. I'm not going to tell you for free when you can pay me $100 and I'll tell you at one of my courses.
There you go. So book on for a reloading course, guys. Oh, by the way, for you guys that don't know, we have actually put all of these episodes on YouTube now.
Oh yeah, I meant to say that.
Yeah, so get on YouTube, have a watch if you haven't seen us before. Jump on YouTube.
So we've got 9 episodes so far. They're all on YouTube. So if you've got some friends that aren't on Facebook, or if you want to watch it with a little bit more
clarity.
Well, you can play around with it a bit more on YouTube, yeah?
If you want to see these in high definition.
Yeah, that's it. And on YouTube, of course, you can just put it up on the screen, on your TV screen.
Yeah.
And watch it on your TV.
Which, great idea.
Yeah.
Watching us live. Well, not even live.
I think we're up to a 60-inch so far. 68 inch. I think it's the biggest that we've been on so far. But we've got 9 episodes online. I think this is week 9 though, because we had 2 episodes in 1 week, yeah? And so, but this is week 9, episode number 10. So yeah, we're really cracking along with it.
We're doing all right, aren't we?
Oh, yeah.
10 weeks, that's...
Well, we're probably up to, that's probably like 15 hours of...
Vic reckons, great info, but his brain hurts. Shut the fuck up.
Yeah, no,
Gary, yes, I did see your email, mate. I've just been under the pump. I haven't actually got to it yet. I'll hopefully get you an answer either tomorrow or Monday, mate. Sorry about that. Phil actually reckons...
What, project?
Yeah, that he's been telling his missus about the importance of throat length for ages. That's actually got more comments.
I wouldn't open my mouth too much, Phil, because we all know that you're punching well above your weight.
I've seen Phil. I don't think I've seen him.
It doesn't matter. If you've seen Phil, you automatically know that he's punching out
above his weight.
Yeah. Okay. Barrel lifespan. And how do you know when to replace a barrel? So barrel lifespan is a subjective term because as your barrels wear, you lose your accuracy, and your accuracy requirements are different from the next person, you know what I'm saying? But typically speaking, there are some things that you can look out for, okay? When your barrels start to wear, what they're actually doing is they're not wearing the whole length of the barrel. The actual diameter of the barrel doesn't change very much at all. Yeah? Throughout, you can put 20,000 rounds through a barrel and it won't change. What's actually happening is you're starting to wear away the throat. So what happens is when you fire around, most of the heat, well, the hottest part of the barrel is where the rifling starts, in the throat section of the barrel, yeah? And that gets the hottest, so it expands the most, and then it contracts. And the problem with that expansion and contraction is, the throat in the barrels get cracked up, like a dam bank does when they dry out in summer, and you end up with that cracked pattern. You get that in the throat of the barrel. Now when that happens, they start to erode away even faster from firing and that sort of stuff. And then you'll get to a point where the throat's worn away considerably and you're seating your projectiles out longer to get the same sort of seating depth. But also it means that the bullets don't start spinning straight away. Yeah, the rifling gets shallow in the throat section, and the bullets travel for a certain length before they start to engage in the rifling and turn. And then eventually you'll start to really suffer from the accuracy. Now you can set barrels back in the guns and recut the throats, and that's a temporary way of getting around that. But generally speaking, once you start to see when the bullets don't start engraving the rifling straight away, what ends up happening is you end up with a lot more copper build-up. Yeah, the bullets start dumping a lot more copper in the barrel. And then that's a good sign to say that you're going to have to start looking at either a new barrel or getting yours recut. So when does that happen? So on a 223, you really shouldn't see that happening for 4,000, 4,500 rounds. On a 308, you're talking 3,500 to 4,000 rounds. On a 300 Win mag, you can see that at around about 2,500 rounds. On like a 7mm rum or something like that, you're talking maybe 1,500 rounds. But those numbers are very, there's a lot of things that go into those numbers, yeah? So it depends on the barrel material. It depends on whether it's stainless steel or blue. It depends on the hardness of the barrel. It depends on whether you keep the barrel clean or not. It depends on how hot your reloads are. It depends on how long the projectiles you're shooting are. There's a lot of things that go into it, but they're sort of typical numbers.
How many rounds you fire one after the other?
Yeah, how many rounds you fire in a string. Because if the barrels get really hot and then cool down, then you wear them out quicker. So there's a lot of factors that go into that. But how can you identify if your barrel's starting to really wear? Your groups will start to open up. Only a little bit, but they will start to open up a little bit. And then you'll start noticing, if you keep your barrels clean, you'll start noticing one day that the barrels are just getting that bit harder to clean. You know, you're having to put extra solvent through them, and you just can't seem to get the blue out. And that's a good indication that your barrel's most of its way through its life. Yeah, by that stage you might have another 500 rounds at the most out of that barrel before the groups really start to open up. And you have all sorts of other problems. You can actually get pressure issues and a whole range of other issues as well. But keep an eye on the cleanliness of your barrel. Yeah, make sure you're keeping your barrels clean and note any differences in the ease of cleaning, because that can indicate something that's going on.
The Greek's on. Hello, Greek.
Hey, the Greek. Hi, mate.
Probably watching with the young fella.
Jess is probably there as well. Hey, Jess.
Hi, Jess.
She'll be playing Call of Duty next week or something.
Good on her. You got any more to go on that one? Or?
Well, that's barrel lifespan and how to know when you replace it. All right, a couple more, but I'd rather get you to move on with the Nosler stuff, yeah?
All right. What are we doing there then, since this was your idea?
I don't know, you can just make it up as you go along.
And you haven't really told me what we're doing, but let's go for it.
Some dude named Nosler. What was his first name?
Gary.
Gary? I thought it was Frederick.
Paul.
Mr.
I'm not sure.
Mr. Nosler.
Mr. Nosler.
Mr. Nosler went out and shot something one day and his bullet failed him, and so he went out and thought he'd design his own projectile.
See, that's a story that comes along on pretty much everything, you know.
Yeah.
Like Mr. Fucking Loophole. Oh, I was out shooting with me German mate scope and I didn't do what I wanted to do, so I made a better scope. Mr. Bloody Lilja. I was out shooting with my barrel and I didn't like the way it performed, so I went and built my own barrel.
Thought I could make a better one.
It just seems to be the story, so we'll run with it. How's that?
What was his first projectile?
Number one.
So the first Nosler projectile, so he had it out, I'm pretty sure, I'm doing this off the top of my head, right? So I'm probably wrong.
Which
and
is
if
better
you
than
want to
what
go
I
and
thought, 'cause
fact
I've
check
got
me
no
on bloody
idea.
Wikipedia, go and do it, I don't give a shit. I'm pretty sure he was out shooting elk or something like that, and the projectile that he used failed to penetrate, it came apart too early, and so the first projectile that he made, I think, was the partition. I'm pretty sure it's the partition. There's not one there. I don't have any partitions to show you. What a partition is it's a standard projectile, but there is a, like, see your jacket on the outside, but there is a partition through the middle, hence the name. There's a partition through the middle of copper, yeah? And so the front half of the projectile mushrooms like a standard expanding projectile and does a lot more damage. But if you hit something hard, like a bone or something like that, it might shear the nose off the projectile. But the back half of the projectile with that copper partition, the back half works like a full metal jacket and just keeps going, yeah? There's a similar projectile called the Swift A-frame, which is similar but different in other ways. And we'll cover that some other time. But that concept is...
There's a bloody partition behind us cut up too that I could have, if I'd have known about it, I would have knocked out and...
Oh, is it?
Yeah, I just can't get it out of that bloody glue. Anyway.
Why is it fucking glued?
Oh, because it's
I had it in a box.
No, it's part of my shotgun thing.
Oh, the shotgun stuff.
Runs that nice
Yeah,
partition.
I explained it well.
It's brilliant because you can say, yeah,
I'm pretty sure that's the original projectile that he did, yeah?
well, it makes sense. If you were shooting something big and you didn't get, good penetration with it, then
Yeah.
why wouldn't you build something like that?
What's probably the most popular Nosler projectile though?
Probably one of them two, currently.
Why? What are they?
Because they're the ones I sell the most. So that's the varmint and the ballistic tip.
No, they're both ballistic tips.
Wow, but one's
ballistic tip varmint, one's ballistic tip hunting. What's the difference?
Sorry. One comes in a green box, one comes in a orange box.
Why do I even ask you? Why are you even here?
Because you just threw this on me. Like you walked up and you put a whole bunch on there.
So the varmint, so one of the main features that make it, so ballistic tip is like jacuzzi. Is that correct? Yeah.
Like Dyson.
Like a lot of companies make plastic tip projectiles, but the only one that's an actual ballistic tip is the Nosler, and that's because it is one of the best projectiles with a plastic tip. Yeah. So if you say ballistic tip, it's actually the Nosler, even though you might be talking about a VMAX or a Blitzking or something like that. So the ballistic tip, the main thing about a ballistic tip which makes it different from other plastic tip projectiles is the big solid copper base to the projectile, yeah? So most projectiles that are made for varmints, for example, like that one is, they have a thin copper jacket and it's the same thickness the whole way around, yeah? Because it's made out of a cup. So they get a sheet of copper and they punch out a piece of copper and then they draw it out. And so the whole thing's the same thickness.
It's because when you varmint, you tend not to be eating the food in as well, so it's a lot more frangible, for lack of a better word.
Well, it's also because a lot of other plastic tip projectiles owe their lineage to match projectiles, and it's much easier to make a accurate, like a consistent projectile with a jacket the same thickness the whole way around than what it is to make one with a controlled expansion projectile with a solid copper base. But essentially what it means is that for the same, like they still open up, they still do a lot of damage, but the difference with the ballistic tip projectile with that solid copper base is they'll smash through things, yeah? So unfortunately a lot of projectiles out there with plastic tips are based on match projectiles. They blow up too quickly and you can actually do a lot of harm unnecessarily using those sorts of projectiles. So if you hit a kangaroo in the nose, for example, and if you're using a really light projectile, you can blow all the cartilage out of his face, but not kill him. You may not get correct penetration if you're trying to shoot a pig or something like that. You really need to be using a bit stouter projectile, and definitely ballistic tips are much better for that. So the difference with the hunting projectile is it's much thicker in the walls as well. So it's got thicker walls and it thins down. It still has a thin jacket at the mouth, but so it's thicker than the varmint, but it's not silly, not dummy thick.
Not dummy thick.
Not dummy thick.
Not dummy thick.
We're going to go home.
Yeah,
I'd like to.
We'll lock up.
Alright, what do you want to move on to? Ballistic silver tips maybe?
Well, are they bonded? Oh, no, you can talk about ballistic silver tips. What's that?
It's a ballistic silver tip.
Yeah,
I
what
don't
is
know.
it?
I don't know fucking all about it.
Fuck me. Ballistic silver tip is a molly-coated ballistic tip. It's the only difference.
Is that it?
That's it.
Yeah, right.
It's a ballistic tip, and they put molly on it. It was a combined technology thing done with Winchester, and they loaded it in Winchester factory ammo.
Yeah, have you ever tried to get these?
Yeah, they don't make them anymore.
No.
Stop making.
So then
I
what?
bought up a heat for my 7mm because I rooted the barrel in my 7mm with
Jesus Christ.
the hell was that? With molly build-up, yeah? People are like, oh, molly's better because you don't get copper build-up. No, you don't get copper build-up. You just get molly build-up instead, which is just as bad for performance. What did you break?
Nothing.
So you've got two AccuBonds here as well.
How many jumpers are you wearing?
Why have you got two AccuBonds?
Oh! So yeah.
Oh, I just grabbed because they're different.
Oh, what's an AccuBond orange? Right.
All right. What's the difference between a ballistic tip and an AccuBond?
Go on. Tell us. Enlighten us.
Fuck, it's in the name.
It's a bonded projectile.
It's a bonded projectile. So the AccuBond is very similar to a ballistic tip. You can tell the AccuBonds differently because they have a white tip. Doesn't matter what the caliber it is, they've got a white tip. Ballistic tips are color coded to their caliber, yeah? So 22s are like orange, 25 cals are blue, I think 30 cals are green. I think there's a purple in there. Anyway, they're color coded. With the AccuBonds, they're white. Oh, I'll tell you a quick story. Kivas will like this. Kivas told me the story. That's an AccuBond ally.
Yeah, I know.
One of our reps he's the rep for Nosler, and he was at a show and he was at his stand, and he had someone come up to him, a roo shooter come up to him and says, oh, I use ballistic tips for shooting roos, and they're a brilliant projectile. I really like them, but can I get them with a different coloured tip? And Kivas says, what? What, a different colour tip? What do you mean? He says, oh, because I use 22 cals, I use the 22 cal ones only come with the orange tip, and the kangaroos can see them coming.
Fuck off, he didn't.
He reckons, I want a dark tip, and that way they won't see them coming. And Cubist said to him, well, if Subaru can see the orange tip coming and jumps out the way, then he probably deserves to win.
No. Someone surely couldn't have said that.
Yeah.
No, don't believe it.
It's Cubist.
I
He's
don't-
from Queensland.
I don't believe
Of course
you
they
either,
say
Cubist.
People from Queensland say
But
stupid
he
shit.
makes shit up too, like.
Who, Cubist?
Yeah, he tells good stories, but
I don't care whether it's true or not. It's fucking funny.
he doesn't let the truth get in the way of a good story.
Whatever. I believe you, Cubist. Ignore him.
I still love you, Cubist, but your story is shit.
Right, so we've already spoken about that. Akibon.
Oh,
No,
okay.
we're talking about Akibon.
Okay.
So Akibon. Akibon actually used to be, I think it used to be part of the ballistic tip series, just after a certain point when they started getting into your heavy projectiles like 30 cal 180 grainers, they started making them bonded. And I'll talk about the bonding process in a minute. But they've separated the bonded projectiles from the non-bonded projectiles. So non-bonded, the ballistic tip, bonded are the Akibons. And they make them from everything, I think they make them down to 22 cal. I know they make them in a 6 mil.
Yep.
And up from there, there'll be a couple of different options for Akibons in each colour. And the Akibons are, like I said, they're bonded. So what they actually do, Nosler do it with a chemical bonding process. You can do it with heat and all sorts of stuff. But Nosler do a chemical bonding process. So they have the jacket, and then they put a chemical in there, and then when they stick the lead core in there, the lead core bonds to the jacket. And what happens is then, if you've got an unbonded projectile and you hit something like bone, the jacket and the core can actually separate. The problem is then is you've got the jacket, which has the integrity but no weight, so no energy, and then the core, which has the weight, so it's got energy but no integrity, so it doesn't hold together, and so you lose your penetration. The idea with a bonded projectile is that the jacket and the core are fused together, that you can't separate them, even if you hit bone and that sort of stuff. So they hold their integrity, they hold their weight and their energy, and so you can smash through bone and that sort of stuff and get deeper penetration is essentially what it's for. So that's the Akibon by Nosler. Again, it was actually voted in the 2005 the best general purpose projectile for America and African game. So if you're hunting plains game out there, like non-dangerous sort of species and that sort of stuff, or if you're hunting like antelope species of North America, then the Akibon is one of the best projectiles you can use. It's also one of the best projectiles to use if you're hunting bigger game in Australia, like horses and camels and that sort of stuff. And certainly, you know, big pigs and that, the Akibon is a really good projectile for that. Next.
Akibon Del
What's the difference?
Well, it looks like it's got a bit of a different ogive, so it's got a tangent ogive on it.
No, they both got tangent ogive.
Well, I don't know that, do I?
You should know that.
Why? Why would I know that?
Because I just told you.
When have I ever fucking sold a pack of them?
Oh, they've actually got the bloody recommendations on the back of the packet.
Yeah, I know.
What to shoot with them.
I know that bit.
So the difference to the Akibon LR is it's the bonded cord projectile, but in a much higher ballistic coefficient shape. So the standard ballistic tips and the Akibons, the boat tails on them are only very short. They don't work as boat tails. They don't actually increase the ballistic coefficient. The boat tails on them are only there to help you when you're seating your projectiles in your cases. Okay. So with the Akibon LR, the boat tail is much, much longer to increase BC. It's got a much longer ogive on the projectile. They're a little bit harder to get them fit in magazines, but if you need deep penetration at long range, high weight retentions, high energy transfers, then the Akibon LR is a really good projectile for that. And you can even see it. Well, what colour are these?
I don't know. Didn't look at that.
They are...
That's a 6.5.
Oh, 6.5, so it'll be hard to judge. But that's the 6.5.
It's definitely got a longer boat tail.
Akibon LR, much longer. This is a 30 cal, I think, is it? No, 7mm 160 grain. So you can actually see the 6.5 is almost as long as the 7mm 160 grain, even though it's only 129 grain. So the boat tail is heaps longer on that. I'll do a close up in a sec. The boat tail's heaps longer on the Akibon LRs than the standard Akibons. Yeah. So that's AccuBond
And then we've got
What else
custom.
have we got?
We've got the custom comp.
Oh, I'll talk about them first, though.
Oh,
Well, you want to talk about custom comp?
well, I don't know. I forgot
Well,
about
you got to talk about. I almost spoke about those. We'll talk about these ones last.
Yeah, that's right. Well, we'll go this one first then. So we got the Varmageddon. Varmageddon is probably one of our best-selling projectiles.
Why?
Because people fucking buy it. He always says stuff like that. Why? I don't know, because people buy them. That's why they're the best selling, but they work. That's why. That's why they work. What is that one? That's a little 6mm 70 grainer. So as you can see, it's got no boat tail at all. It's just a flat base, but it is a ballistic tip. They've got the ultra thin jacket, so they're all sort of like the other ballistic tip ones with they've got a thin jacket pretty much all the way down, so they actually got a really good expansion on them. So they're really good for hunting rounds.
The Varmageddon.
The Varmageddon, yeah.
Yeah, so the Varmageddon was actually one of the first projectiles designed by Nosler when they got new ballisticians in. So they made a fight-based projectile.
I'll leave that out.
Yeah, leave them all out.
I'll leave it out.
What is that? That's a ballistic tip.
So ballistic tip, you've got a custom compound. I haven't talked about them yet.
Can't talk
Got
about
one of
that.
them out. Ballistic silver tip, I think you have to open it.
Got a knife.
Yeah. Always.
I can go back and
My loophole knife.
Do you want to give away a loophole knife?
Oh, one or two, yeah, but I don't know what I'm going to give it away about now. So I might do that next week, guys. I'm going to give away a
Oh,
loophole
fuck me.
knife.
You do that every week. Oh, I'll do it next week. Oh, I'll do it next week. Oh, I'm not prepared. Oh, I'm not there at 5:30. Fuck you.
I don't have to be here now. You can have the Zaine show.
All the ratings will go through the roof and you'll feel bad though.
No, I won't. I'll be at home not watching us.
No,
Well, I actually don't know why you guys watch us. We're just a pair of fat knobheads sitting here talking about dumb shit.
Oh, you speak for yourself.
Okay, a pair of fat knobheads. Right. Now, custom comp. I don't know. I know even less about these than I know about them.
Nosler, here we go, here's the competition.
But-
Nosler got in the shit a few years ago
But-
and got made to re-talk about a heap of their ballistic data because they did something to one of their product lines in their marketing that was found out to be incorrect at a later date. You tell me what they did to get in the shit and I'll give you a loophole knife.
Because that there, I run the RDFs personally. That's what I run. And have a look at that.
It's the older design.
It is the older design. It's nowhere near as sleek, beautiful. But have a look at the metal plate on it. It's fucking poor.
Most
Probably
match
have to-
projectiles are like that.
You probably have to trim it.
You don't have to fucking trim it.
I would.
You don't have to trim that one because they do it for you.
I know, beautiful. It's already done.
Lapul is the other one. They actually trim their med plates.
And they should, especially when it looks like that. I know you guys can't see that.
It doesn't fucking matter.
It looks like they just snapped it
If
off.
you're just shooting pigs, it fucking doesn't make a difference.
I don't shoot pigs, I shoot steel.
Well, then don't buy it.
I'm not.
But what I'm saying is that Nosler didn't wake up and say, fuck me, what does Trent Allen want in a projectile? Did they? They didn't give a shit about you.
Well, they should.
No, they fucking shouldn't. So what did we get up to?
What we should do is give away a packet of your fucking ammo.
No. Well, that's for builds throughout it anyway.
Just give it away.
Yeah.
So we're up to custom comp versus RDF.
I was just saying the Varmageddon's got flat base because
RDF.
it's one less machining process, and so they use a very thin jacket, so they're much easier, they're cheaper to produce. Yeah, they make them in 22 and 6mm, and they make a 30 cal 110 grainer as well, so varmint style stuff. So if you really want a really good priced projectile, they're very similar to a Hornady VMAX, but the main difference is the Hornady VMAX has a tangent ogive, and these have a tangent ogive.
Hang on.
Did I say tangent?
You did. You said tangent.
Hornady have a secant ogive, and these have a tangent ogive, and it's different for seating depths and that sort of stuff. These are easier to get to shoot than a Hornady. Tangent.
It's getting to that time of the night where it's like, and this is a projectile from Hornady VMAX.
Yeah. All right, what's the next? So you've spoken about custom comps.
No, well, I was waiting for you to speak about custom comps.
I shoot
The old
155
ones.
grain custom comps which are those, I'm pretty sure.
Yep.
There might be 180s as well.
They're a 190, 30.
190. The old ones that Bill used to use in his 300.
Yep.
You were shooting them out to 1275 metres, so it's not like they're shit, you know.
So they go alright.
Yeah, but I use the 155s in my 300 back before I pulled the barrel out of it to shoot roos. Like cheap projectile, really good performance on kangaroos and that sort of stuff. You do have to drive them a little bit.
I use the 105 6mm version
Of the RDF.
of the RDF. Yep.
So the RDF's a newer projectile. It's got a longer boat tail.
Yep.
It's got a longer ogive, higher ballistic coefficient.
What's different
Right.
between the two that made mine just go straight through the roos and leave just a fucking 6mm hole compared to what yours are doing?
Didn't deform.
Yeah, why?
Could be a range of things. Like that slender ogive design is probably got
Just
a lot to
needles
do with it.
through?
Yeah.
Yep.
It's probably got a lot to do with it more than anything.
Is there
It's
a
probably got a
difference?
slightly thicker jacket profile, but I couldn't tell you for sure. I'd
You
have to
don't know?
open it
Okay.
up and.
Okay.
Nosler won't tell you. I've tried asking Nosler before, and they just send you they get the marketing boy to answer it.
What I was really hoping you would say there was, well, I don't know, because you just put me on the spot, and I go, oh no, did I? Oh, that's terrible. We do that to someone.
But I didn't say that.
No, so that fucked me.
Yeah, fuck it.
Yeah. What else?
So we got everything.
Yep, that's it.
I think. Yeah. So the partitions I don't have here. I think that's it. Yeah. I think this is their. I'm just going to give you guys a close up of these. I think that's pretty much their range. They produce quite a wide range of projectiles for a lot of different game.
Did you know we actually had some nice people? You know when we were arguing about why people would watch two fat knobheads talking? We had some nice people. And so Nathan said, it's because you give away free stuff. So thanks for that, Nathan. And Daryl actually said, I sort of learned something new each week.
So you can see the first projectile, ballistic tip, very short little boat tail. Next one's the Varmageddon, so flat base, but quite slender on the nose. So, yeah, they're not bad in the wind. Next one is the AccuBond LR. So look at the length of the boat tail on that, yeah? And that's really to get those high BCs, to get the wind drift down, get them to shoot flatter, more energy transfer. Next door to that one is the AccuBond with the white tip. So that was a real favourite there for a couple of decades. Anthony, that's next weekend, mate. We're at the farm next weekend. Next one's the ballistic silver tip. So it's exactly like the ballistic tip, the first one, except obviously this one's a different caliber, but it's molly coated. Then you've got the RDF. So that's one of their latest projectiles. It's a really well tipped projectile, high BC, real slender ogive, and really long boat tail. You'll see that as well. So if you're wanting long range performance, that's the one to go for. The last one's the custom competition. So good on game, but not just a nice good competition and very cheap. Yeah, so really good value product. So that's most of the Nosler range. Like I said, the one that's missing is the partition. The partition has got, you can't actually see the difference. They look pretty ordinary, but they've actually got a partition through the guts, which stops them from coming apart in an animal. Oh, and look at that, I got it back on.
Nicely done.
Okay. So that's the Tech Talk section of the program. If you've got any other questions about Nosler, sing out. We'll probably, next weekend we'll be out at the farm, so we're not going to do a Tech Talk like that week. But the week after I'll probably throw him under the bus again and get him to talk about Hornady. So you've got 2 weeks to study, dude.
2 weeks, alright, cool.
2 weeks to get here at 5:30 as well.
What I'll do is I'll have a couple of weeks off. And then
Fuck
look
off.
it up. Oh, I'm going to leave those out. I'll leave those out for now.
Chokes on 12 gauge. Chokes go from cylinder through to full. So you go cylinder, improved cylinder, modified, improved, modified, full. You can get an improved full, extra full choke. Sometimes they call it a turkey choke because it's for shooting turkeys. So it's an extra tight pattern, yeah? So they start off at 12 gauge cylinder is just straight, yeah? So there's no restriction at all in the choke. It's 729 thou in the barrel, 729 thou at the end of the choke. Problem with that is that with no restriction, you end up with a nice loose pattern, but the problem is that you end up with big holes in the pattern, yeah? So if you're shooting solids or something like that, it doesn't matter. But if you're shooting, shot, I would still recommend putting in an improved cylinder. An improved cylinder brings your tightness, your grouping just a little bit. It's only a 5 thou restriction off the top of my head, so it's not much. It brings it in a little bit, but it makes the pattern much more even, yeah? So there's no holes, so you don't miss stuff. Go to a modified is, you know, your half choke. It's a really good choke for sort of general purpose hunting and that sort of stuff. It's not bad if you're using light shot for shooting clays as well, depending on if you're shooting like a trap or skeet type, probably more of a trap type position. Not a big shotgun shooter, so I'm not 100% sure that. You go all the way down to a full, so nice tight patterns if you're using heavy shot like SGs and that sort of stuff, shooting big animals like pigs, roos, then that's a really good idea. But the other ones that you can go for, so they're numbered 5 through to 1, yeah? So 5 is your loosest through to 1. So if you see little notches on your chokes, count the number of notches, that'll tell you what choke size it is, yeah? So when you tighten your chokes up, always make sure you get a little bit of grease on the threads, because otherwise you have to bring it into us and we'll have to get the choke out and we'll destroy it getting it out. A little bit of grease on the threads so they don't bind, but you want to screw the choke down and just nip it. You don't want to rip it up because you'll buckle the choke itself, but you want to make sure it's tight, because if it starts to come loose, the gases can actually pick up around the edges of the choke and blow the choke out. So yeah, so take your chokes out after you finish shooting and give them a clean as well, just to make sure they go in and out correctly. Beyond that, there's not much else about chokes. Oh, you can get breacher chokes as well. So if you leave your keys, lock your keys in your house or something like that, and you need to get inside, you get a breacher choke and blow the door handle out. Yeah.
Or the hinges.
Or blow the hinges off.
Just blow the hinges off.
Yeah, either or.
Yeah.
So
you changes the handle then, I suppose.
What night vision under a K is good? That's probably a question for him. But I would say none, because we're not at that point yet where the technology's come down. It's that much cheaper to produce a good product for that cheap yet. You know what I'm saying? Because you still run with anything like this. Cheap things aren't good, and good things aren't cheap. So you're really going to have to spend a minimum sort of, what are they going for at the moment? Like an Excite or something like that?
Oh, at the moment probably
not the 4K, just the Excite 2.
Yeah, the Excite 2 is going for about $1,500-$1,600 now after the price increase.
So that's probably a result of the exchange rate more than anything else. And hopefully our exchange rate's going to come back a bit. There's a couple of companies, I think Bloomberg as well, is also saying that the American dollar's going to tank, and so things will be getting much cheaper, but we don't know when that's going to happen, if it happens. So there's not much in night vision under that sort of coin.
And if you're gonna, if you're gonna get night vision, buy something that's half decent. A cheap night vision setup is just going to frustrate you and going to turn you off going to night vision. So, really, truly, just save up an extra grand, get yourself something for $2,000, and be mostly happy with it. I reckon.
All right, we're done with all the questions.
I think so.
I'm going to talk to you guys just briefly. What's the time?
I don't know.
We've got a good couple of minutes.
I can't tell you at the moment. It's 7 o'clock.
All right, we're just going to talk about this for a couple of minutes just to get you guys thinking about some things, and we won't just talk about it next week. But me and Trent were talking about this yesterday, and there's two issues that I've got here. What was proposed was that in Australia, for example, and in other countries as well, that in Australia, if you're married, so me and my wife are married, or you and your wife are married, if one of us wants to...
maybe if we keep being late, I won't be, but...
Yeah, you'll be right. You're not married anyway, so you can't divorce you. You're not married in Australia, so you can't... So...
We're married.
Steph's there.
Yeah,
so, if your wife wanted to get sterilised, or if she wanted to have a hysterectomy or something like that, she would need your permission. And if you wanted to get the snip, you would need her permission. Yeah, and you need to talk to a doctor about those sorts of things. And the proposition that was made by a person who's very much about individual rights and that sort of stuff says that shouldn't happen. No, if you want to do that, you should be able to make the decision on your own. It's your body. You should be able to go out and get sterilised. And arguments for it were, oh well, if some husbands are really abusive and they rape their wives to make them pregnant to make them dependent on them. they also said that there might be medical issues associated with it. But my argument would be that, so basically that's what they were saying. What my argument, the first argument that I had was, well, if you're married to someone, you've taken a contract, you've taken their interest above your own. You signed up to that when you got married. And that the decision to bring children into the world or not bring children into the world is really something that's, the two of you need to make that decision. It shouldn't be one piece of the party that decides whether you are or aren't going to have children or not. And so my argument is that, well, it should be imposed, that the decision isn't yours to make whether you do or don't have children, that it's something that your partner needs to agree or not agree to. Now, the thing is that if you're not going to talk to your partner about these sorts of things, then what's the point in getting married in the first place, But we had quite a heated discussion about it. What you came up to a verdict when you spoke about it.
I don't know whether I wanted to put this on Facebook, to be honest with you.
What I want to do is I want people, the issue that I had was people are taking their individual freedoms as being more important than anyone else's freedoms, or their individual rights are more important than their responsibility to other people. And I really, and the other one that is that this argument basically came to a point where it wasn't about the argument anymore. It was just about being right. It didn't matter what it was. The other person had to be right. It wasn't about discussing ideas anymore. It got to a point where she was quite prepared to construe the meaning of the word selfish, because I accused her of being selfish. And she said, well, I'm not selfish because I think selfishness is a subjective term. It depends on who you are. I was like, no, selfishness is selfishness. So it came down to a point where she had to be right about this. The problem is that we're seeing that in the firearms world as well, We're seeing it now to a point where we've got a lot of issues that are getting debated, like locally, as well as with the police and that sort of stuff. And it's no longer about, and Shane Elmore will be the first person to tell you, it's no longer about what's right and what's wrong, what's in the public interest and what's not in the public interest. Now it's just about winning. It's just about saying, we might have made a mistake somewhere along the line, but we're not going to back down from that, and we're going to stay on this path, not because it's the right thing to do, but because we can't afford not to win. And we're seeing that a lot as well over east, with the Commissioner in New South Wales backing his staff. He's not ready to admit that they've done anything wrong at all, and that it's completely someone else's fault. He can't accept the possibility that he's not 100% right. You know what I'm saying? So that's the big issue that I've had this week.
I'm just watching the comments going, what the fuck is he on about? When is this going to segue into shooting? Well, there you go, it segued into shooting. So, yeah.
Well, it did segue to firearms a bit. So, but this is an issue that I'm seeing with police as well as and our side of the things as well, is that people aren't willing to accept that maybe they're wrong. Okay? And they have to be right. Well, I'm always right, so I don't have to admit that I'm wrong.
Fair enough.
And you guys make a habit of pointing it out. Like if I do, and I apologise and I admit I'm wrong, and then you go, oh my God, there's someone get this on tape. Zaine admitted he was wrong. But this actually happens quite regularly.
It doesn't.
It does.
It does.
It happens every week.
Once.
It'll happen once a week.
Once a week, that's not a lot.
But what I'm saying is you don't always have to be right. People make mistakes.
Not when you tell me I'm wrong at least once a minute.
No, but tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm wrong in regards to police.
Oh, you're not.
So, and I don't know, is Shane watching?
I don't know.
But, I mean, that's an example, is that Shane's gone to extend out his range, his 50 cal range. And the police won't grant it. And it's not about what's in public safety or not in public safety anymore. It's about winning. To the extent that the police, in their documentation that they've provided, have actually out and out lied to try and get their point approved. You know what I'm saying? It's not about it's not about public safety anymore. There is no international championship for long range shooting. Well, that's just blatantly a lie. It's just so, and that's really pisses me off. That sort of thing. And it manifested itself this week in the discussion in regards to individual rights as opposed to responsibility.
It was a good conversation. It was. I enjoyed it a lot.
But there's a lot to be said about individual rights and responsibilities.
There is.
And it's perhaps something I could talk about another time.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to float that idea with you guys. What do you think in regards to that conversation as well that we had? And what are your opinions as well? I want your opinions on maybe I am wrong. Maybe individual rights, your individual rights as an individual should trump your responsibilities to your family
Or to the public.
or to public safety.
Alright, can we go home now?
All right, fuck yeah.
Alright, thanks everybody for watching.
Love you all.
Episode
Next
10
Friday is going to be at Billy Farm. It's going to be a lot of fun. So
tune in.
we're probably going to be a bit knackered though, to be honest.
Oh, yeah, I'm going to say so. But tune in anyway, have a watch. See.
5:30 it'll be fucking dark.
It will be dark. So,
Scoops, if you're still watching, we want the fire going at 5:30, yeah?
alright,
We're going to be on the dot.
catch you later everybody. Have a good weekend.
Have a good weekend, guys. We'll see you tomorrow.
For sure.
Oh, you tomorrow?
Yep. One of us is.